Show on Money Talk 1230 KSBN. We're lucky enough to have with us today Nick Richardson, the founder and CEO of Gr8ter Veterans Spokane. And as the listeners know that have followed along, as a veteran, I'm always very excited to have a veteran in here. One, I really am grateful for all the work that our veterans in the community are doing to help out other veterans, and always looking for an opportunity to get the word out about different organizations where I think people can get involved and or help with something. So very excited to have Nick with us here. Nick, welcome, and thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you for having me on the show.
Yeah, it's, as I mentioned, exciting to have you. I've been excited and enjoyed getting to participate in some of the Gr8ter Veteran Spokane events, and that's been wonderful as well. But maybe, since our listeners may not know necessarily about Gr8ter Veteran Spokane, maybe take a moment and just talk a little bit about yourself, maybe a little background, and then how you got started and what you're up to.
All right, so I am from Spokane, born and raised. Graduated Cheney High School in '99, joined the Army immediately after. Did basic training at Fort Sill, Oklahoma. 13 Bravo.
Go Artillery? Yeah.
There we go. Dave, as some of you know, is Marine Artillery, so, almost the same. But anyway, so I went to Schweinfurt, Germany, Ledward, as part of the 1st Infantry Division, Charlie Battery, and later Service Battery. Did a combat tour in Kosovo, got married over there, worked as a DoD contractor on post for a little bit, and then came home, went to school. And shortly after my master's program was completed, that's when I kind of went through a 2-year rut period of depression, if you will, where I came up with the services that Gr8ter Veterans hopes to spread nationwide eventually. That helped me through a dark period, and I think they'll do the same for all of our brothers and sisters out there and their families.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So certainly the impetus when you decided to start Gr8ter Veterans was the resources that you found that helped you. What do you kind of see as the Gr8ter Spokane, and like what are some of those resources, and what are those things you think that helps a veteran recover, certainly in transition from being on active duty, however they leave active duty service, to becoming a civilian veteran?
So in terms of the services that helped me, there wasn't a lot out there, so I had to kind of make it up as I go and create it. And it was kind of a, not to overplay a title, but a lone survivor situation, to where I had to figure it out, be a lone wolf out there and find my way, because there wasn't a lot. Social media really wasn't big and booming then, so there wasn't that way to approach things. County vet services didn't have a lot, so it was a lot of trial and error, figure out what works and go that route. But in terms of getting out, transitioning from active duty, everyone has a different experience and they serve, and they have a different need when they get out, whether it be family services, job services, different forms of help, enrolling in college, trade school, etc. And it's tough, and that's part of the reason why we're strict on saying not only helping veterans achieve greatness is part of our motto, but also that everyone on the board and a lot of our supporters believe the best person to help a veteran is another veteran, because we can understand what they've been through. We share experiences. A lot of us share goals. And
I think shared trust. I mean, I think there's a lot of research and a lot of both actual scientific, but also anecdotal research that has basically shown that veterans really having another veteran come along with them is very powerful.
Absolutely. And everyone tries to focus on the one-size-fits-all solution to any problem out there, whether it's veteran or non-veteran. And I think a lot of people need to almost see it like fishing with a net. You got to catch as many as you can, but you won't catch them all. I tend to look at the one-size-fits-most and help as many as I can, even if it's an area that's outside our lane or outside our core services. If I know someone that can help, I'll facilitate a connection or a meeting between those 2 or 3 or whatever people. Another thing I do is I'm not afraid to take on new projects and step away from my comfort zone to find a way to help veterans. Sharing resources is another big thing.
Well, and I think it's one thing that's interesting. We've talked a little bit on this show before, but as I've talked to veterans and other folks, is the small nonprofits, I think, have a much greater flexibility and opportunity to reach out and to do those different things that many of the large governmental or city, state, federal organizations can do, because of the regulations and the the stipulations that they've got to work through, whether it's a process, whether it's various requirements, qualifications, where the nonprofits, and in your case you're talking about being able to step out of those things, can pick things or help somebody that may not necessarily qualify for something or isn't able to fit into a program that meets that person's needs.
Yeah, I mean, I'm in a unique position because I'm not owned or bought by anybody. We're independent, so I can work with whoever I want. But the good thing about us being smaller, it gives us less criteria we have to go by, like you said, in terms of who we're helping. We don't have to say, okay, you're not a combat vet, or you didn't do 20 years, or you didn't do this, or you didn't check this box.
Other than honorable, so we can't necessarily help you in this manner, or whatever. There's a lot of flexibility, I think, or you're not in our county, even things. I know you've reached out to outside of the county and even the state to help veterans. So I mean, those are things that would be really limited from a traditional governmental organization, whether it's county vets or the VA or any of those things. So certainly, what do you see some of the things that might be missing currently as far as supporting veterans? Certainly some of that flexibility is something you've already brought up, but what other things you think as we look at what veterans making that transition?
Well, I mean, you've known me for a while, and I'm not afraid to be bold and say what needs to be said. And one thing I think our government as a whole in a lot of states out there fell miserably at is creating legislation that creates funding to help veterans. I mean, we're good at a variety of other things, special education, overcharging taxes to pay for roads that still aren't fixed, like in our state. I mean, Seattle's like glass, and our Spokane roads remind me of a combat zone in Kosovo with impact craters everywhere. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've picked up a nail in my tire, or popped a tire, or bent a rim in this town.
Well, I think people's alignment are routinely highlighted as a cost, that untold cost. People like to say, well, it's, same thing with we've talked about this before, property crime, the untold cost to the individual that necessarily doesn't portray in the government costs.
Well, there's that, and I mean, when you look at a lot of the contemporary issues that go on nationally, they affect us in Spokane greatly, and sometimes even more than other areas that are getting a lot of news coverage. And I mean, there's a lot of areas that simple fixes are needed. Go to your average community here. How many people even know their neighbor's name or anything about them? I mean, people are scared to come out of their houses sometimes. I mean, we find money for programs to help sex offenders, for example, the ones they release from, what is it?
McNeil.
McNeil Island, and there's a house here that gets paid good money to rent rooms to these deranged individuals, but yet we can't help a veteran find a penny, guide him anywhere.
Yeah.
Why is that? I mean, that's absurd. All these, people say they care about veterans, but they don't share anything on social media. They don't open their wallets, and they don't take time.
And I think we've talked about the show really is it may be something very small sometimes, as the thank you, or can I help you with something today, or how you doing, and I certainly believe that the veterans being able to help veterans makes a big difference, because there's, as you mentioned, there's that personal connection. It's that small fraternity, and that number is getting smaller and smaller as our population kind of socio-demographics change. But one of the challenges, I think, and you've worked on this as well, is the suicide challenge, which is really just, to me, just unconscionable that we continue this and we've not been able to crack this nut. When as I speak out to our veterans or to other folks that might come into a contact with a veteran, one of the things I like to say is, don't give the enemy the satisfaction. I mean, they spend a lot of time trying to kill, maim, blow us, eliminate us, and yet we come home and do it for them, instead of trying to live that great life that our fellow brothers and sisters didn't get that opportunity to come back and do that. So we want to make sure we're doing what we can, and I appreciate you looking at opportunities to make a great life for veterans, to particularly when they're struggling and may just need that hand or somebody to come alongside and help them for a short period.
Well, I mean, when you go to suicide, for example, right? A lot of things play into that. You're not the war fighter you were. You're not in the shape you used to be. Your wife may have left you. You have a hard time finding a job. You're not around your support system that you had in the military, so you got to get out and find a new one. A lot of things play into that. And, I've talked to vets both that believe in God and don't, believe in various things. And one common thing I've found is everyone has something to believe in no matter what it is, but you also got to think about all the reasons you have to live, all the great things you've done, can do, and are still ahead. When you kill yourself, you're hurting more people than you're helping. I mean, those of us that have a wife and kids or a husband and kids, you're going to hurt them. You're going to permanently scar their lives, their future. You're taking from them. And any of us that have became parents don't want that for our kids.
Or parents or brothers and sisters.
Yeah.
I mean, your friends, neighbors, fellow veterans. All of us want everybody to be great and to find whatever that sense of greatness and success in their life is. I think one of the challenges I've certainly noted myself is, that going from that very tight-knit, very supportive environment out to a larger just community where as I said, some people don't even know their neighbors, and there's really very little or no connection. And so trying to find that connection, that passion, that as you know, there's nothing like being a member of a military unit. It is as good as it gets.
Well, and a lot of us that serve are very prideful, proud of our units, our accomplishments, our friends, our leaders' accomplishments. Take, for example, recently, it was the Big Red One's birthday, so that was kind of cool for me because that's my unit. And then shortly thereafter, my old first sergeant, who was our first sergeant in Kosovo, Sergeant Major Michael Grinston, just got promoted to Sergeant Major of the Army, which is a big deal because to me that means a lot because this man was a great leader to anybody, even people he didn't like, but then to see the Army recognize him as that great leader made me more proud to be from the roots I'm from.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. We're, for those just tuning in, this is the Dave Lucas Show on Money Talk 1230 KSBN, and we are, I'm having an interview right now with Nick Richardson, the founder and CEO of Gr8ter Veterans Spokane. Nick, as we look at some of the things that you want to accomplish with Gr8ter Veterans, I know you've talked about the EVAC Center. Maybe that's something you could talk a little bit about with our listeners and kind of how you think that helps fill in some of those missing resources for veterans.
Okay, so the EVAC Center is something I came up with. EVAC means Every Veterans Assistance Center, and the way that markets is obviously well to veterans and non-veterans alike. But the reason
Everybody loves an acronym,
Yeah, but as a veteran, EVAC means typically getting out of a bad spot and into a good one. So that's part of the reason we went down that road too. And in terms of the center, what we're trying to offer with that is we're trying to blueprint a center in terms of facility, floor plan, but also services that can be blueprinted here and go nationwide so that we know, okay, to raise one of these, we need X amount of dollars, X amount of staffing, we need these programs, we need help from this, and this. So those services we're looking at are a gym for obvious reasons, area to train service dogs, offices for VSOs and other organizations. Large.
For our listeners, VSO is Veteran Service Officer.
Sorry, I dropped
that's all right. You're fine. An ability to basically link a veteran to services, whether it's through governmental or non-governmental sources, but essentially help get them connected, primarily with the VA, but it could be other options as well.
Yeah, so we want to do that. We want a gym so we can have, holiday meals, events, concerts, guest speakers, trainings of various kinds.
And really, I think potentially an opportunity to really bring back some of that camaraderie and that support.
Yeah.
It's interesting you mentioned gym. That's probably one of the things that I've talked to veterans where they really struggle locally is there isn't a good location or single source where people can go. I know the Maine Grand Staff Hospitals looked at trying to put something together, but anything is, folks, our listeners, and Nick certainly knows this, anything with the governmental efforts are years and years out, even once it's approved. And so it's certainly nothing on the immediate horizon to try to do, but that's something I've heard from veterans as well. It's just a veteran gym or a place where they can go and, connect and exercise or do whatever.
Well, yeah, but it's going to be more than that because we, also want to have a cafe, bistro for coffee. So there's, several veteran coffee companies out there, Black Rifle being the most recognized, but then there's also Operator Coffee out of Moses Lake and a few others. So you could do something like that, either a franchise opportunity or to provide goods or services. You could have a veteran merchandise area for different veteran apparel companies.
That could be a great opportunity for local veteran businesses. If somebody's trying to get something started or off the ground, an opportunity to have a good outreach place as well.
Yeah, and then, if you had a gaming area, whether it's foosball, pool, or even some video games where the veterans can come hang out with their family while they're waiting to get services or just unwind, a lot of us when we were deployed played games like Madden, for example. In downtime we'd fire up the Xbox or whatever game console, play some Madden. Some of us would win and lose. I lost a lot, but anyway, and there's different things we can do with that. And then when you circle back to events like guest speakers, like recently, I don't know if you follow the podcast world at all, but
not as good as I should. I know we were talking about that earlier. Right?
But there's a Navy SEAL commander named Jocko Willink that does the Jocko podcast, and he focuses on principles of good leadership, which I think you would appreciate. And there's a guest on his show that I've watched 3 of his podcasts, a gentleman by the name of Jason that is a retired Navy SEAL that has moved up this way. I won't give away all those details because I don't like to do that without talking to someone first. But I've talked to Jason about giving some leadership type stuff or coming to speak at our events, and he's willing to do it. Great guy. And, they focus on family, camaraderie, teamwork, leadership, and all these good principles that I think apply not just to a military leader or a nonprofit leader, but also, some of our political leaders could use it, city leaders, business leaders. And, even if you apply a small amount to your life as a father and husband or a mother or what have you, I think it's also beneficial, a lot of the principles.
Yeah, oh no, there's no question. We've talked about that and had other guests that really talk about how to reach out with the community as a parent or, as a neighbor to just help out. So I think you're exactly right there. There's a lot of value that can be gained on that. You've also done one of the things I think that's interesting that I think really resonated with me. I thought one of the things I really enjoyed when I was deployed, but also I think it's something that connects across all, demographics and backgrounds is some of the events. You've tried to do outreach events with veterans, whether it's bringing music entertainers or things. I think that's an interesting avenue as well, something that you can kind of uniquely do that isn't done normally in most of the governmental organizations as well.
Yeah, there's been significant research just on the music side alone to how music reduces, some of the symptoms and burdens caused by TBI, PTSD, or PTS, depending on which acronym you're more comfortable with using. MST, a lot of these traumas that afflict our veterans as well as our civilian population. Plus, music is a way to bridge the gap between the community and the veteran community to where everyone likes music. Typically people don't fight. Sometimes the best way, honestly, to have a conversation with someone is to sit down, grab a beer, and talk to them. And we've lost that in society with the boom of social media. We've been fortunate enough to work with a lot of great vets like Gordon Ewell, who's a good buddy of mine, blown up 6 times, I believe the total was. Too many, but great guy. You've met him.
And a great writer. I've read his book, so that's we'll pitch that out real quick. Gordon Ewell, Ewell, and if you just Google him or go on Amazon or any of the what do we call it, book search engines, he'll pop up and.
He'll be up here again soon too. But Gordon's someone I love. That dude's just solid. We've had Sailor Jerry up. The musician Rick Huckabee that wrote Muddy Water for Trace Atkins, and Trace was the Wounded Warrior spokesperson for a while. We've had recently Navy SEAL Kristen Beck. She's a great speaker, great time to hang out with. We've had several elected officials come to our events, and it's been an all around good time, and we hope to keep doing them. But the bottom line is we need support, money, and the facilities, and if you can get the people to do it for free, you can't always get the venues to do it, and vice versa. And my wife's kind of put the kibosh on me spending my own money. So.
I know, which is, you mentioned when you came in that you've been spending a lot of personal money to keep things going, and I'm grateful as a veteran. Certainly, as our listeners are following, if you're interested in getting involved, that's certainly something. Again, I've mentioned looking for opportunities. If this is one of those opportunities that resonate with you, whether it's this or your community activities. Certainly don't miss that opportunity. Why don't we, I'll reiterate at the end, but why don't you, if you want to just, since we're at a good spot, if somebody did want to get in contact with you, do you have a web page or email or phone, or what's the best way to
all
reach
the
out
above? Usually the quickest way is to text me. That's my cell, 509-953-3515. Our website has all of our contact stuff. That's Gr8terveterans.com, but it's spelled Gr8ter Veterans.com. Or our Facebook page, Gr8ter Veterans Spokane, where Gr8ter is spelled the conventional way because Facebook doesn't like funny spelling. So either one of those will work.
Very neat. One of the things I think that you've also been working on, which is interesting to me, your strategy, just because it really makes it, one, brings the veteran in early, but two, makes it, I think, more affordable, is bringing service dogs to veterans, which is, I think, again, another real advantage. So maybe take a minute and talk about your efforts and how service dogs can help veterans in a variety of different ways.
Okay, so service dogs obviously help us cope with stability issues, medical alert, stability. I think I just said that, sorry. Any of our PTSD, MST, night terrors, there's, about 50 billion probably different reasons you could need one or have one.
Well, and even things like if you're, picking up your keys, or,
Yeah.
I've been amazed at some of the presentations I've seen on dog. I mean, open doors. I mean, get phones.
Yeah.
I mean, amazing some of the things they're able to do to help a
It's
veteran
kind
that might
of,
not
it's
be
kind
able
of,
to.
kind of sad that you can teach an 8-week-old puppy to pick up keys, but you can't teach a millennial to hold a door for a woman. But anyway, they do a lot. So you got to get into the training. So a lot of programs out there range in $25,000 to $60,000 for a dog. That is
and
at
maybe
the
repeat
cost.
that again. So to get a dog for a veteran as a service, somewhere between $25,000 to $60,000, depending on the training for that dog. So that's probably for most people. Certainly for me, for most people, that's probably an unattainable resource.
Yeah, so my plan is next year I'm hoping to buy a house on some property, breed my own dogs, so that cuts down a significant cost. Work with a couple local trainers, maybe some high-profile veteran trainers that are out there. Mike Ritland, the Navy SEAL dog trainer, that's somebody I'd like to work with. Who knows what that costs or what the availability of that is. But someone like that that'll draw a little bit more social media attention to the training side itself. Come up with a program that's cost effective to where we can put a self-help DVD with the dog, and at 8 weeks get the veteran involved in the training, because then you have sweat equity. Unfortunately, the dark side of things, there have been cases where a dog's been abused because it wouldn't do what the veteran wanted. That has happened, unfortunately. So if the veteran,
you get a chance to see how the veterans
how
the
they
dog
match with the dog, because sometimes it could be the wrong dog veteran match. Shelters are a great facility, but I personally don't buy a lot of dogs there because I don't know their history, and that's kind of tough for me to work with sometimes, but it's an option. There's all sorts of options out there. I'm not saying no to it, but
well, and if you get enough notoriety of this, maybe you might get a point where people would donate dogs that might be a service dog opportunity, and they've got, they'll donate one dog from a litter or something like that. So there's probably other ways that you might be able to do that as also.
Yeah, I mean, we plan on, and I've ran this by the wife so it doesn't get kiboshed down the road, but we planned on, out of our litter, because we have German Shepherds, we're going to do one West Coast dog, one East Coast dog. And then we're going to start building kind of like an affiliates program, so we have trainers nationally that we know, okay, this person's good. They'll cut the vet a break on the price. We can put this together, or we can fly the vet up here, maybe get a hotel to donate a room for a couple weeks. And then there's some local trainers that are just patriotic as heck that aren't veterans that want to help out. So we're looking at that. But I mean, it's.
I guess as our listeners are listening, think about that. So even in that conversation, you talked about 4 or 5 different things depending on where you fall out. Hotels, obviously straight up donations are always helpful as they try to get a program off the ground. But I mean, access to dogs, access to trainers, contacts. So there's a lot of things in that doesn't have to be a specific or a big chunk bite the whole thing for our listeners that might want to get involved. And you mentioned your Facebook. I think that's certainly something that people can follow along if they would like and see how you're doing.
Yeah, and we try and post updates there. Obviously, the more in-depth stuff's on my personal Facebook. It's got my picture in a suit smiling. I do vet people before I let them on, because that's probably the only place on social media where you'll see pictures of my wife, kids, my dog, my sense of humor, which sometimes is rated more on the R side, I'll admit that. But that's kind of where I can put out more of me and what I do and what my everyday life looks like. So
yeah. Well, thank you. I really do appreciate you coming and talking about that, and really reiterating to our listeners the importance of just reaching out to veterans, reaching out to your community, looking for opportunities to get involved, and how, again, if somebody wants to do that and reach back out to you, what are the best contact sites? Let's go through those one more time, just in case somebody didn't get a chance.
All right. So my cell is 509-953-3515, and I do work a Sunday through Thursday job, so bear with me on getting back to you. Our email is on our website, which is Gr8ter spelled Gr8ter Veterans.com, and then our Facebook page is Gr8ter Veterans Spokane, spelled with Gr8ter the normal and correct way.
Yeah, so again, I thank Nick again for coming on, and really for all the things he's done, his service to our country. I always love interacting with great veterans, but also what he's doing now in our community to help other veterans, because again, it's hard, and you heard he's spending a lot of his own time and money to really reach out and help folks that might be having a hard time. So if you see somebody, please don't miss that opportunity. You never know what your impact could be to help somebody out, help a neighbor out, and sometimes it's something real simple. So thank you for joining us this week, and Nick, thank you for coming in today.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
This is the Dave Lucas Show on Money Talk 1230 KSBN.